Imagine a single hair being carved into a work of art. This is the world of micro art, where huge statues of the Buddha can be reduced to a millimeter in height without losing the slightest detail. But what sort of man can produce these miniature wonders? Please watch The Wondrous World of Micro Art, part of our unique handicraft series. These exquisite works of art are so small you can barely see them with the naked eye. However, if they are projected onto a screen, you can admire the elegant calligraphy of the poems and the vivid depictions of people and animals. They are examples of micro art. Panzhihua in Sichuan province is a place that's full of light and fresh air. It's also home to a well-known micro sculpture artist. This rundown house on the banks of the Jinsha River is where Guo Yueming lives and works. Every morning, he sits on his workbench overlooking the sunlit river and begins his day's work. Guo Yueming describes his life as a never-ending journey. But only under a microscope is it possible to see the mark he's made on the world through his exertions. His works of art are testament to his dedication and his solitary nature. This work is just 5 centimeters long, about the length of a matchstick. but in it is reproduced every detail of the famous painting Riverside Scene at Qingming Festival by the Song Dynasty artist Zhang Ziduan. The majestic city buildings, the busy streets, and the river crowded with boats are reproduced in the same vivid detail as the original. This despite the fact that it's only 1/100th the size. This piece of bone is 1.85 centimeters long and 2.9 millimeters wide. On it are carved 33 poems by Mao Zedong, totaling 2,101 Chinese characters. This piece is called 100 Pandas. It's on a piece of bone that is 7 millimeters long and 1.5 millimeters wide. It contains 100 pandas, each one unique. They are laid out symmetrically left to right and top to bottom, yet each one seems to be enjoying the freedom and tranquility of its own tiny world. In China, micro art is an ancient traditional handicraft. Miniature writing has been found on Shang Dynasty oracle bones from 3,000 years ago. Recently unearthed artifacts from the Warring States period include seals the size of a few grains of rice. In the Ming and Qing dynasties, miniature works of art became commonplace as the economy and society developed. Miniature works of art created in a variety of mediums became objects of entertainment, and some of the artists who produced them became celebrities. There's a gallery in the National Palace Museum in Taipei that contains a miniature sculpture of a boat made from an olive pit by Chen Zuzhang. The artist drew his inspiration from the poem Ode to the Red Cliff by Song Dynasty poet and artist Su Dongpo. The sculpture is a detailed reproduction of the boat with Su Dongpo and two friends seated on it enjoying a meal. Imagine a single hair being carved into a work of art. This is the world of micro art, where huge statues of the Buddha can be reduced to a millimeter in height without losing the slightest detail. But what sort of man can produce these miniature wonders? Please watch The Wondrous World of Micro Art, part of our unique handicraft series. Today, Guo Yueming is going to engrave the poem Preface to Tang Wang Pavilion by the Tang Dynasty poet Wang Wei on a small piece of bone. Guo Yueming has drawn white grid lines on the bone, having painted it with black ink. This helps him to standardize the size of the script. After engraving the poem, Guo Yueming applies ink to the surface. After the ink is dried, he carefully removes the excess pigment using a cloth and a knife. Then he affixes his seal to it using red ink. In art, rich rewards come from hard work. This is one of Guo Yueming's earliest works. The piece of glass is 1.9 centimeters long and 1.5 centimeters wide, and on it he replicated the famous work of calligraphy by the famous Eastern Jin Dynasty calligrapher Wang Xianzhi, 13 lines from the Ode to the Goddess of the Luo River, originally written by Chao Zhi during the Three Kingdoms period. Zhu Chongzhi lived in the 5th century under the northern and southern dynasties. The statue next to a sesame seed is an early freestanding piece done by Guo Yueming in 1987. This tiger is carved from an ordinary grain of rice. It is 8.9 millimeters long and 2.9 millimeters wide. Guo Yueming painted it in multiple colors to make it as realistic as possible. Guo Yueming first attracted public notice at a meeting of the Panzhihua Calligraphy Association in 1988. From then on, his works gradually became known and appreciated by the public. In 1992, he traveled to Beijing. There he persuaded the Beijing Hotel to stage an exhibition of his works.
1992年元月22号下午在北京饭店，那次就出乎我意料之外，到了媒体还有20多家吧，当时中央电视台也报道过，北京电视台也报道，我还居然是沉住气那么20年不下山，下山以后居然是那么受欢迎。
Guo Yueming returned to Panzhihua, where he received an official welcome from the city authorities. With their support, he established a non-profit organization for studying and creating microart. The honors and acclaim he received didn't change him very much. He wanted to continue making art as he always had. But he soon ran into a practical problem, a lack of funds.
这看我自筹资金，这个我就有点头疼了。自筹资金的话，但我能力太有限了。
In the 1990s, Guo Yueming left Panzhihua to travel through Sichuan. He even got as far as Shenzhen. Wherever he went, he never lost his love of microart. In fact, Guo Yueming had a lot of opportunities to better himself economically through his art. Some artists had opened galleries to sell their artworks and were earning a good income. However, Guo Yueming believed that if his works became commodities, they would lose their artistic purity.
刻这个的是1分钱挣不到，1块钱挣不到。你说它什么价值呢？它给我带来愉快，我高兴。
The problem with the micro work of art is that people rarely have the chance to truly appreciate it. Guo Yueming still lives quite frugally in his run-down house. Even though he's burdened by debts, he often turns down offers to buy his works. Many people can't understand his motives. Guo Yueming is so deeply immersed in his own artistic world that he pays no attention to other people's opinions of him. However, he takes a keen interest in any news about microart. When he was in Chengdu in 1997, Guo Yueming heard about a Russian sculpture of 3 camels so small that it could pass through the eye of a needle. He took this news as a challenge and resolved to make a smaller and more exquisite sculpture. By that time, he had acquired an essential piece of equipment, a microscope.
没得显微镜的时候，也能够搞微刻，搞微雕可能有难度就大了，或者甚至于有问题了。
Special microscopes have been used in microart. For one thing, they need to have a double eyepiece, which makes them more expensive. The microscopes can magnify the object the artist is working on 100 times. At this magnification, familiar objects take on an entirely different appearance. When Guo Yueming first began using a microscope, he discovered that he was facing some entirely new difficulties.
倍数小的时候，你手的摆动你感觉不到；当你把倍数调到了100倍呀，或者是80倍呀，你感觉你手晃动，对吧？其实是一样的，但是你感觉晃动了。150倍以上，那简直那个晃动，和你如果不经过很长时间锻炼，你心理上就感觉这个动的我没法控制到了。
Having adjusted to working under a microscope, Guo Yueming was ready to take on the Russian challenge. He decided to sculpt a lion in gold. In the end, he used a piece of gold weighing less than 2,000th of a gram. Not only did the lion look entirely realistic, such was the detail that 8 teeth in its mouth were clearly discernible. The world-famous Leshan Buddha sits on the eastern bank of the Min River in Leshan, Sichuan. It's over 1,300 years old. It sits with the cliff behind it, facing the river. At 71 meters high, it's the world's largest surviving statue of the Maitreya Buddha. When he was living in Leshan in 2004, Guo Yueming conceived the idea of doing a micro-sculpture of the statue. Guo Yueming's initial idea was to sculpt a copy 1.6 millimeters high. He chose a suitable piece of bone and began carving it under the microscope. The incredibly small scale of the sculpture created enormous difficulties. It presented him with a bigger challenge than he had ever faced before.
太难，因为我是刻的正面的罗山大佛，所以说眉毛要统一，眼睛要统一。我就刻那么小以后，经常出现什么呢？左边眉毛刻得很好，右边眉毛粗了，又摩擦又把它修改。眼睛一个大一个小也不行，所以这种反复修改，这么修改下去，整个头都慢慢又变小些了。我开始是1.6毫米高的罗山大佛，最后修改完了以后，要得了，定稿了，眼睛眉毛就把我难到了，最后定了是1.1毫米。
Most people don't realize how much hard physical work is involved in making a micro sculpture. So much concentration is required that Guo Yueming can only work effectively for less than an hour a day. He spent many long hours on that sculpture of the Maitreya Buddha.
这件作品呢，刻了1年08天。
This is the Leshan Buddha, as sculpted by Guo Yueming. It's only 1.1 millimeters high, but like the original, which is the world's largest statue of the Maitreya Buddha, it portrays the Buddha's dignified and kindly countenance. More amazing still is the even smaller Buddha by its side, that's only 0.3 millimeters high. Micro artists also face many challenges in selecting their materials. This is a strand of hair. It looks very strange under a microscope. The texture of the hair is very soft, so a micro artist must be extremely careful when working with it.
我萌发用头发刻花瓶的这个想法呢，就是因为想到花瓶空我是没法刻，把它刻空的，它本身头发是空的，里面是空的，而且那个白的那个管管呢都看得见，所以说我就这个把它刻成个花瓶。
This is the vase of flowers Guo Yueming made from a human hair. It's 0.3 millimeters high, and the shape of the vase is quite distinct. In the top half of the sculpture, Guo Yueming divided the strand of hair into fine filaments that are inserted in the shaft like a bunch of flowers. Guo Yueming is about to demonstrate how to make a micro sculpture from a human hair.
它头发是圆的，但是不是很规范的圆，每刻一下都很难，每刻一下都很难。它那个头发一个这么弧形，你这个刀子刻的时候，当你刻到这撇的时候啊，它就下坡了，等于是空了，那边空了，去没地方了。当你一拿的时候呢，这边还好一点，这边稍微你就晓得自己把它慢慢这么下坡一样的哈。毛发中间是空的，但是我们刻不到那个位置。
Removing the pigment reveals the work Discovery, the sunlit flower city of Panzhihua. Guo Yueming is in his 60s and has been doing micro sculpture for nearly 50 years. He still lives a simple life, which revolves around exercising, practicing calligraphy, and making sculptures. Microsculpture is an ancient yet young part of the country's intangible cultural heritage, and Guo Yueming gives a great deal of thought to how it can be passed on.
我的孩子他就说我这个挣不到钱，他不想学，学了1年半他就不学了，他很有天分的，啊，而且很有条件，毕竟耳濡目染嘛，这么多年在身边，对吧？但是我这行有个特点，越是身边的亲人他不觉得我这个好了不得，他就在那见惯不惊。
Lei Kai comes from Chengdu. He is Guo Yueming's apprentice and has been learning microsculpture for 7 years. He lives with Guo Yueming in Panzhihua. In addition to studying Guo Yueming's art, he also does all the housework for the two of them.
在我们年轻人当中，知道微雕的人哈，几乎很少。我们没有平台，也是这个原因吧，就是它的知晓度不是很多，有些不知道是微雕，什么叫微雕，是什么东西。曾经我家里面就是自己的妻子嘛，反对过，就这个东西，你每天练字、写字、刻东西，没经济收入，他也反对。
Lei Kai is fond of calligraphy, and he met Guo Yueming by chance when he was teaching in Chengdu. He was immediately captivated by Guo Yueming's exquisite microsculptures.
就是传承这方面的话是很艰辛的，但是我们精神生活呢是很丰富的，精神上是很满足。从单纯的从微雕这个方面的收入啊是，应该是叫，措辞上说应该是说叫很不尽人意。每当我们做出一件作品的时候，心里那种高兴、兴奋的喜悦那种心情啊，就把这些东西就冲淡。
This is one of Lei Kai's pieces. Although it's not nearly as small as his master's, Guo Yueming thinks he has already reached a high standard. Microsculpture is a part of China's intangible cultural heritage, with a history of over 1,000 years. For all this time, countless artists like Guo Yue and Ming have given their time and energies to producing superbly crafted and beautiful works of art. The tiny works of art reveal not only an amazing world in miniature, but also the tough and solitary spirit of the artist. Agar wood, so valuable it's 100 times more expensive than gold. It takes tremendous skill and nerves of steel to produce carvings from such precious wood. But the rewards, both artistic and financial, are enormous. So what kind of artist would become an agar wood sculptor? Find out in the Secrets of Agar Wood, part of our unique handicraft series.